Boundaries are so important in relationships, and yet many of us actually struggle to properly implement it. And as someone who also struggled in the past with boundaries, I can understand why so many women we have such a hard time implementing it and even learning it in the proper way. Because many women, what we usually do would be that either we don't really communicate because we want to avoid conflicts, and then we actually resent the other person for it, or when we communicate, we would already carry this energy like, oh, how come you didn't care for me? Why did you do this? You shouldn't be doing this, etc., etc. And then we try to convince the other person why they should respect our boundaries, why it is so important, etc., etc. But what happens is that when we do it in this kind of way, people subconsciously they tend to put themselves in a defensive mode because they now feel threatened by this energy coming at them. So they would either feel that they need to defend themselves, which is by dismissing what we are bringing, like, oh, you shouldn't feel this way, I didn't mean to, etc., which actually worsens the situation, right? Or they might say that, yeah, I understand, but then nothing really changes. And this is a very interesting aspect to observe in human nature in general. Because you see, imagine that you are in this workplace where the boss is really not so caring with their employees. And then the employees are fed up. And then, oh, you cannot treat us like this, etc., etc. But then what happens often is that these employees, they still stay in this workplace. And because nothing really changes for the boss, then the boss would look at it, well, it's still working for me and I'm not seeing the problem, then maybe I'm not changing anything. And this happens often subconsciously. So people, often because they don't feel the urgency, they don't feel the reason why really to change because the situation actually works for them, then they simply disconnect and conserve their energy. And it happens often subconsciously. So it's not like they are ill-intended really on purpose. But sometimes people are just like this. They are too focused on their own things that, okay, there's nothing that really compels me to change. So, how can you actually implement boundaries in the way that truly gets your point across? That truly gets people to listen and respect you. Because, the more you actually stay in a situation, like even if you can, not really bother with it in the moment, you will end up resenting it in the long run. And then your energy will come off as not really respecting or appreciating the other person. Then the relationship itself will get sabotaged in many subtle ways that you might not even be aware of. So, how can you now implement proper boundaries? You see, boundaries is not really about the other person, what they should or should not be doing. It is actually about what you do if your boundaries are crossed. So, how I implement it, I'll give you an example. Once I had a group of relatives that wanted to celebrate something, and they knew that I had food dietary restrictions, so I don't eat a particular kind of meat. However, the people who organized the celebration, they organized it in a restaurant that actually only serves that particular kind of meat or salad. So they were inviting me, but the only option that I would have then would be the salad. And what I realized in that moment was that, okay, if I accepted the invitation and I went there, I would first, the salad for me wouldn't be fulfilling. I would be hungry. And then second, I would feel that they didn't consider my needs, so that I would kind of feel excluded and I might resent about it. So I didn't want to accept something and then feel resentful towards it. Then what did I do? I told them, hey, I understand that you guys want to celebrate in that restaurant. However, that food doesn't really work for me. But, you guys can go without me and you guys enjoy, have fun, okay? And because I didn't really force the other person to understand my boundaries. I didn't chase after them, convince them, say that, hey, you guys didn't consider me. How come you knew about my dietary things? But rather, this doesn't work for me, then you guys enjoy and I'm out of here. Like, I don't have the energetic space for this. So now my boundaries are there. And then I left them with the choice. Okay, if I want to include Monica, then I have to find a restaurant that also accommodates her needs. So that is exactly actually what happened. Then they found another restaurant and we all went there together happily. So it was a happy ending. And you have to understand that implementing boundaries, it's not by how loud it is, it's not by how imposing or even assertive it is that it is successful. But actually, what are you going to do if something happens? And the way to implement the boundaries when there is a situation that you don't want to participate in because it doesn't align with you is that you can simply pull your energy away. For example, many women, they want commitment with a man, but then they are in this situationship. So what they usually do is that they stay and stay and stay and then nag the person like, hey, it's really important to me, the labels and etc. and etc. And what happens is that first, the more you try to chase after someone and convince them to, do what you want them to do, usually human nature, our human brains get turned off and we might even subconsciously want to rebel against it. So even if some people might say, oh yeah, I understand, then the way they rebel against it is to simply ignore your request, your needs. And second, you are not really propelling the person to change because the person would feel like, okay, but this situation works for me. Of course, they don't say this or they don't really consciously feel like this because many people, they are not bad people. They are just kind of disconnected or, oh, this situation works for me. So they just, go with the flow. And what happens is that many men, they will look at it and subconsciously, the logic would be like, okay, but this works for me right now. And because I don't want to lose the connection, and yet I don't know how to handle it, then I'll just continue as long as I can, stay in this relationship. And then what happens? The woman waits and waits and waits. And then she resents about it. And then because she resents, the attraction is starting to diminish. The respect and appreciation is starting to diminish. And now what happens is that many women, they don't feel, affectionate. They might even feel borderline critical with the man because inherently they are frustrated with the man. So now they might choose certain words that are a little bit harsher. They might do things a little bit colder with them. So, for example, maybe when a man wants intimacy and she's like, I don't want to right now, like, etc. The energy. And then what happens is that the man actually feels, what is really happening here? Because I don't really like being with her anymore. And now the relationship is already sabotaged because he cannot provide what you need, and now you also don't provide what he needs. And this is why it is important to understand that staying in the relationship and trying to be in harmony with the other person and not bring in the difficult topics, while it can sustain the relationship for a little bit longer, in the long term, it really is not sustainable. Even for people who are in long-term relationships and marriage, if you have things that you resent in the other person, and that really is important for you, and that's why you cannot drop it, but you are not really talking with them about it. And often because you don't know how to talk with them in a way that you are confident that it will work out, then you will end up resenting the situation. And then the energy you carry will already impact the relationship negatively. So this is like a loop. Like he's not, for example, he's too passive, like, or he's not stepping up in the ways that you need him to step up as a partner. And then you resent it, but you might not be able to communicate it. Or maybe you communicated in the past and it resulted in more defensiveness. And then, it just gets worse and worse. So implementing proper boundaries is not about doing it by force, but actually do it in a way that empowers yourself. Like, what do I do? What do I choose to do when something happens, when they cross my boundaries? And often, for example, if you are in a situation that you're not happy with, like in this case, like you're not getting the commitment that you want, actually pulling away and honoring your needs as well as you honor where they are at in their lives, that maybe they are really genuinely in this space where they cannot really step up and assume a higher commitment. Because, often men not able to do so might not have to do so much with the woman, but actually more to do with either their past traumas since childhood or past relationships, or they don't feel that they are having a stable life, stable finances. Then many men are actually affected by this, and then they cannot really assume another commitment when they don't get their own commitment with their lives, their career sorted out first. So you can honor where a man is at in their phase of life, and at the same time honor your need of having a stable relationship with someone who is capable of co-creating a relationship that is stable, sustainable, and genuine. So then instead of trying to convince him to see your point and to do what you want them to do, you can just pull back and then give them the choice. Like, hey, this relationship really doesn't work for me, and this is what I'm looking for. So I see that right now it might not be what you're looking for, and that's okay. So maybe we can just, each of us, align with other people who are better matched with what we truly desire. And yeah, then you actually just leave them the choice to choose to truly actually step up because they actually feel that they can do it, and then they also care enough about your relationship, or they will simply realize, okay, I cannot actually give her what she truly needs. Then I find someone with whom I can co-create whatever I need in this moment. So this is how you can create healthier boundaries, not by forcing the other person, but actually deciding what you want to do with a situation, and then leave the other person the choice to do whatever they feel that is most aligned with them. So my name is Monica, and welcome to Blooming Feminine Academy. And if you want to learn really more about communication and how to be able to solve, for example, if you are having chronic fights with your husband, boyfriend, and you really want to know how you can communicate in a way that can be more seen and heard and cherished in a relationship, I have the relationship reward, the 6-week connection reset program, which helps you to actually understand how can you actually fix the foundation of a relationship so that you have this emotional safety and connection that you truly need to have the difficult talks. Because what happens in chronic in long-term couples is that they have so much chronic fights that what happens is that when they need to talk about another issue, then their brains are already wired to react in a defensive manner. And you need to dismantle this defensiveness first before you can actually have the difficult talks, or else it can be just damaging the relationship further. And yeah, in this program, I can help you to do so in 6 weeks. And then another program that I have is the course that is called The Art of Feminine Communication and Influence, which is the course that really helps you understand where do I come from? Where do women often come from in the way they communicate, in the way that they feel, and what they actually need? And then where do men actually come from? Why they often respond or even react in certain ways. For example, why many men they are defensive when a woman brings up something. And how can you actually communicate in a way that is genuine and authentic and heart-led, and at the same time gets your point across so that the person can truly see, understand, and hear you for what you say. And then you can really have a genuine connection and heal what it is that is blocking both of your connections. So I hope that this video is really helpful to help you learn how to have proper boundaries, and stay tuned